I'd like to welcome everyone back to our committee meeting for the elected official and law enforcement panel. My goal is for this to be our last meeting of this group, and then to pass the work on to the plan review committee. What we're looking at time-wise is that we have tentatively set up 2 plan review committee meetings, one for Thursday, February 11th, followed by one Tuesday, February 16th, both of which would be at 6 o'clock. We'd like to have the document complete by March 1st, and then have a public hearing on March 8th, which is a Monday, followed by the full Board of Supervisors meeting on the 10th, where we would vote on the plan. As everyone knows, we have to have the plan submitted prior to April 1st to the New York State Division of Budget. They informed me, because I had inquired about, in case, because of everything else going on with COVID and so on, about the possibility of having an extension. And they got back to us today and said, no, it has to be in by April 1st. So that's sort of the timeline, which we can send to everybody once this meeting is over, and to make sure the dates are all right. The other thing is what you're looking at on the screen is the work that we've done. We had a working draft, which you have a copy of, which has multiple colors, and then you have this draft, which is a cleaned up version of the working draft. And we thanks to Sherry and Lieutenant Bray and the sheriff, have organized it in a readable manner. But what we've talked about as an organizing committee is to set this up in a worksheet fashion, so that it would be very readable to who's ever looking at it in terms of a layout. And just to give you an example, it would be set up, if you went across the page, it would be category. So if it's transparency, that would be the category. It would be the reform item, a description of what would happen, this Columbia County Sheriff's Office actions, and then a completion timeline. So if it's already completed, it would say complete. If there was a date, a timeline, we would put a date in it. So that would, all the work we've done here, it would lay it out in a worksheet fashion, which I think would be, very effective. Other counties have done it that way, and I think, again, it would make it much more readable for everyone, including someone not really familiar with our process. So that's where we are at this point. I'm going to turn it over to Newell.
Chairman, can I ask a clarification before you continue to review? So the document that we're looking at, the draft, it has a lot of NAs, whereas the one with the red and the blue has a lot of content. Am I understanding that you just haven't gotten the content from this over, or are you actually recommending that for transparency, there's no next steps, there's no short-term strategies, there's no long-term strategies like the draft has?
Lou, can you, because Lou Bray, are you on?
I am on. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yes, the NAs in the first portion were because that the original document had the complaint process listed twice under complaints, and then again later on under section 5. So it was just duplicative. So I just took that part out of section 1 and left it in section 5. I didn't delete the whole section. I just put some NAs in there.
Which, you're on mute, Supervisor.
Sorry, could just so that we don't think transparency's gone away, could you put a cross-reference in there, see section 5?
We absolutely can.
And also too, though, when we lay this out, the transparency is actually grouped in with the complaint process. There's a whole section that's going to be devoted to that.
Yeah, so we're getting into exactly what would be the content tonight. What I'm going to suggest we do different than we've done last time and somewhat the time before, rather than going through section by section, what I'd like to ask each of you is if there's a particular section you think it's important for us to talk about. In other words, there's something outstanding that we focus on those sections rather than walking through item by item by item. But as we looked at it, probably about 80 to 85% of it, we all kind of are in general agreement on. There are just a few areas that we thought you'd really want to continue some conversation about tonight. So let's approach it that way, and we can go through and I can ask each of you if there's anything specifically you'd like to see added or discussed. Okay, let's approach it that way.
So, no, I would venture to guess, those of us on the committee is very familiar with this because we've been going through it and reading it so many times. But some of the other members, might not be so familiar with the categories as we are. So if we're going to do that process, what you just said, could you just go through and read the categories so that it would be a little more familiar?
I can do that. Is that good? Okay. Well, the first category is under transparency. We had a bunch of areas. We have crime reporting, crime stats, which includes access to data. There's public relations and body cameras. Those are all under transparency in this draft. The next section was training, which had cultural sensitivity and bias, mental health, persons with disabilities or medical conditions.
Excuse me, this is Beth.
Yes.
Under training, could we have some kind of nod there to, chemical dependency training, addiction training, something like that? I don't see anything like that in there.
I
Oh,
think
Yes,
Substance abuse disorder training, because I know a lot of times people lump it in with mental health, but some of it is very specific.
okay. Beth, where in there would you think it most would fit best?
Let me look here.
Do you want that under short-term strategies?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, both Greener Pathways and the Columbia County Clinic are able to provide different kinds of training in that area.
oh, Beth, you did a specific program. Can you just say that and then we can put that in on the short term?
Well, Carl Quinn does an excellent training on addiction and addiction in the brain and behavioral related things. I think the correct terminology could probably be retrieved from Carl, but yeah, he does a really good training on that for the criminal justice population, as far as providers of that. So
if you give us the appropriate.
I just want to make sure it's in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, Beth, we will definitely put it in, but if you give us the appropriate language.
I will.
We'll have
I will.
We'll have Sherry put it in.
I
Yeah.
will. I'll get it from Carl tomorrow and I'll forward it to Sherry.
Okay.
Thank
The
you.
sheriff has his hand raised.
Yeah, Beth, that's a great idea. We've had Carl in here before to help train the deputies. And it's a great program that he puts on, and it was well received. So it's a great idea to add this to this document.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay. I was at
Newell,
yes, Mike. I'm sorry.
we're gonna add this, because I believe it was in the in section B under mental health, and I know Beth brought that up, but because where we're adding it now is under cultural sensitivity and bias, so we don't want it there either, correct?
Well, frankly, it could go either place, but I'll leave that up to the committee.
Okay. I mean, we could go there, or, mental health and substance abuse service
fine.
added, and then
Yeah.
detail it B.
That's where we should have it, not under the cultural.
That's fine.
Okay.
That's fine.
Testria, you have your hand raised for now? Is that?
Yes, sorry. So I did just look, Captain Bray, at the section 5 that you're talking about, kind of bringing in section 1. And the few things that I don't see that I think should be in there is individuals being able to call. So one of the current actions under reporting complaints was individuals can call or come in person. When I look in section 5, I only see online, by hand, online, email.
Which
Oh,
sec-
never mind. Just kidding. Drop off in person. But then it talks about complaint forms at county buildings and town halls. I did really like that idea. I don't see that in section 5. I'd like to maybe add that in. What was under next steps number 1, suggestions included having complaint comment forms at county buildings for individuals to pick up, or an online version. It looks like the online is on there. I think it would be good to have paper versions at county offices. I know Sheriff Bartlett even talked about it at the town halls. So I would like to add that back in.
Can I ask that we do this in order? Because I have no idea where we are now.
Yeah. What we were doing is I was just going to walk through the sections like Bill said, so people know what the sections were. And then we're going to start at the first section and say, who's got comments about.
Okay. I'll wait then. Sorry.
In terms of that. So where I was with it, we were at de-escalation of force. And then the section on mental health, substance abuse referral. And inside that was process, procedures, protocol, standards. Those were the 2 there. Then the next section was on hiring. And the first part of that was diversity recruitment. The second part, I guess that was the only part under hiring, right? Then 5 section was community relations. And there we had community policing, complaint process, senior checks. So those were the big, the sort of the big Roman numerals of the sections that we had identified from you as a group, but also before that from the public hearings. So if we could start now with the very first section, is there anything under transparency in terms of crime reporting or crime statistics that there's anything anybody wants to speak to?
I'd like to speak to the very first paragraphs in the introduction.
Okay.
Okay. So it basically, this is starting off by saying that the first paragraph is saying that we're doing this in response to the executive order by Cuomo, which is fine. And I think that sets the background for this. But I feel we should be saying more. We've spent hours and hours at this thing, and we've listened to some really sincere people from the community telling us what they think. And the people that are in this final meeting tonight are a lot of people with a lot of experience and very thoughtful perspectives. But I think there's something else that we need to say in this report to give it context. I think we really should be acknowledging why we're here. And it's we're not here just because Andrew Cuomo said we needed to be here. I think we should acknowledge that through this process and through looking at the data, we have to state that there is a disparity in Columbia County, a significant disparity in the percentages of people who are arrested, prosecuted, and sent to prison based on race. We don't, if people aren't comfortable with it, then we don't have to go to the next step. We don't have to say that this committee finds that there's, I think in America today, there's an ongoing discussion about whether there's systemic racism. And I would be comfortable with saying that there is, but I know there's probably other people around the table who would not be comfortable with that. But at least I think we could all reach a consensus that the numbers, which are put out by the Division of Criminal Justice Services, indicate that there is a problem. And I think that if we were at least to acknowledge the disparity, even if you don't want to use the word problem, just acknowledge the disparity, that would go a long way towards giving this report more credibility and more acceptance. I think that people would feel that they were heard, and I think that that's very important. So I would ask you to consider that the language that, and I've already forwarded this on, but I was thinking of something like this. Quite a neutral statement, perhaps, but say something like this. The records maintained by the New York State Department of Criminal Justice demonstrate a significant disparity in arrests and prison sentences in Columbia County based on race and ethnicity. Although the explanations for the disparity may be complicated, it is clear that we must do everything in our power to address the disparity. It is with that goal that we set forth the following strategies and procedures. That's my suggestion. I would ask you to consider this.
Well, I will say that we are going to do an overview page for the plan.
Okay.
And we were going to include a statement like that in the overview page.
Okay. I'm pleased by that. Thank you. Thank you for
David,
saying that.
Thank you. Thanks, Eugene. David Harrison, you've got your hand up.
Yes, I just want to say that, when you get into sentencing and some of these other issues, that's not about police reform. And even though there may be, and certainly shows that there could be issues with the court systems and prosecution and all that other stuff, we're here for police reform. And, that's a big enough issue as it is.
Yeah.
And I would, my opinion is we should stick with the record that shows what the issues are within law enforcement as far as the police agencies, and not try to go any further on something that we're really not here to discuss. We're not trying to make changes in the entire system. That's not what we're here for. That's not really what information we've asked for, and that's not really what the input has been for. It's been for police reform of the sheriff's office and possibly other police agencies in the county. That's just my opinion.
I would certainly agree that that's the parameters of this report, and that the criminal justice system goes far beyond the issue of the police. It has to do with the court system, that with the district attorney's office, and even with other agencies. So I agree that we shouldn't expand the scope of the report to try to deal with those issues. That would be a huge challenge, and that's not what we're being called upon to do. But even if you go by the stats, which we have, Black people make up 5% of the population in Columbia County, and they account for 24% of the arrests and 34% of the felony arrests. So I'm not suggesting that that we try to explain why that is. That would take us years and a lot more time and exploration than we have. But I think all I'm saying is, let's just acknowledge the data. We don't have to say what causes it, but we just need to say, hey, there's an issue out there. I mean, what I found gratifying last time we were here was when Sheriff Bartlett talked about the need for more diversity and acknowledged, he said, well, we've got to do something about it. And I know that in one of our early meetings, the local police chief said, we want to improve. I just think we need to say something like that. That goes a long way towards giving us more credibility. It shows that we listened and we heard, and that we were trying to do something about it. That's all.
I don't have a problem with that, as long as it refers to police agencies, because that's what we're here for.
Absolutely.
To get into anything else, sentencing and everything, all the other issues that there are that those numbers show, you're going to have to get into all the other issues with society and why people in certain categories commit crimes and all that stuff. I mean, you're getting into a whole big thing that we really haven't put the time into, nor that's not what we're here to do.
I
And I'm
agree.
just afraid that it sends the wrong message when here, everybody's done, I think, a good job and doing police reform effort. And
I agree. I agree with what you're saying. And we can't possibly get into all the explanations for why these numbers are what they are. That's that's a much bigger project than we could ever take on.
Does anybody have a different point of view here? Is there a different position that we need to, I heard the chairman say, yes, we would be putting something like that in the preamble, at least based on, and, maybe it's here, but it will, that content, it's a commitment, at least he's speaking to it, to put that in the report. Is there another point of view here?
Well, I would say something here. I think those are important issues that Jeannie raised. I also agree with Dave that this is not the purview of this. However, I think at the end of this report, we could make some kind of a statement about this is not the end all and be all of this issue. Other entities need to be reviewed and look into to make their own recommendations and strategies to reduce problems in these other areas. I don't think we should ignore that issue. I just think it's not the place within this document.
I agree. I won't say any more on this, but I think the larger issue is going to take much more time and input. And with police reform, you're really going to only be able to help out in this area and correct a small portion of it.
I agree. I agree, but I think it would be important to mention at the end of this as a summary that, it's more than police reform. It's a lot of other areas that need to be looked at.
Oh, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Robert Peary. And then Mayor.
My suggestion is that we include a sentence to the effect that this is a starting point. There are going to be deeper conversations, longer conversations, other panels in the future. But a statement like that would create the bridge between what we're mandated to do here and the other issues in society that will have to be addressed at another time. So I'd be in favor of seeing something along the lines of as a starting point.
Mayor Johnson.
Yes, thank you. I agree with Jeannie, and I have to say that the only reason we're here is because there's a disparity in policing of Black and brown people. The reason the governor issued reforms across New York State is because, we witnessed a man with a knee on his neck, and we saw those horrific 8 minutes. So I think there should be a statement about, systemic racism and, how we as a county don't accept systemic racism. And a lot of this work that we're doing right now is to combat that, because there's no other reason why we're here. We're not just reforming policy just because the policy's up. Thank you.
Okay. Testry, you still got your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate what Jeannie said. And I think really if you took out the word sentencing from her statement, it covers what David and Supervisor Bury and everybody said. It's focusing just on policing. We have data that shows the arrests are disproportionate to people of color. We're not explaining why. We're simply saying we acknowledge there's an issue and we are going to work on figuring out how to change that disproportionate number. So I think that's very important. And I think without that, the document doesn't hold a feeling of real change. Thank you.
Any other comments before we move on? I'm good with that? Okay. I don't see any more hands. Let's move on to the section on transparency. Is there anything in there that we want to have to discuss further? is it covering what we've been talking about? I mean, quite a bit. Sarah, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I have a question under crime stats. Under current actions, the second one, could that be a biannual report? I know later on in the document, you talk about different data reports given at different times, but I think it would be nice to have the Board of Supervisors get more than an annual report.
Sure.
I don't know the reason, because there's other times there's different reports mentioned.
Sheriff, you had your hand up about that?
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Supervisor Sterling, the IBR and the UCR reporting, incident-based reporting and uniform crime report, that comes out of the state and the federal government. We could do any type of reports that you needed. You do it on a daily basis, a monthly basis, a bi-monthly, whatever we needed to do. Some of the stuff, unfortunately, again, from the state, it's an old system that needs to be replaced, as I've said in the past. And they don't dig as deep as everybody wants it dug. But we can run reports. I can run a daily report. So anytime you needed a report, we could absolutely do something.
Could we maybe change the wording then to say on an annual basis or upon request of the Board of Supervisors? And that way you're going to file it annually no matter what. And then if we request it more often.
Yeah, absolutely. We do an annual report. We have to do one, and we try to put a good one out so everybody can see what it's all about. And again, I could do every 3 months, every 4, whatever you guys need. If you guys decide that, hey, David, we want to see this, quarterly. Oh, that's easy. I mean, it's the push of a button, and going forward, I can take care of that, and I can forward it to whoever you guys need it forwarded to.
I will interject that the annual report is required by law by a lot of your different departments in the county. So, but I think it would be reasonable to say a quarterly report. That way, you're not getting random requests from people that
Yeah, I'm good with that. We just got to understand that the demographics that people are asking for, that would have to be manually done by people. The state does not do that in their reporting systems.
Okay.
Okay. So we put that in as, is that an explore or a do?
Quarter sounds good.
We have anything more in crime stats? Can we move on to public relations? Or Testry, did you have your hand up for that?
Yeah, I did have something for crime stats. So my question is on the implementation of local database stats. It was under short-term strategies. It got moved to long-term strategies. And I was just curious as to why it couldn't be in the short-term strategies to get the data broken down by different types. Is that the software Sheriff Bartlett was talking about that costs a lot of money and we don't have the funding right now?
That's exactly what it is, Supervisor. It does cost a lot of money. And with the current budget state, we just can't do it. If somebody would to find a grant, and who knows, maybe there will be grants that'll come down the line with everything going on in our country today that will help establish this stuff as far as what's going on. So yeah, that's why it got moved from short term to long term, because we do have to find the money. I think it's it's about $1 million to get into something like that because again, the state's reporting should have been replaced a long time ago, and they haven't done it.
I'm wondering if we could do some blanket statement, Chairman Morell, at the beginning of the document stating that anything under long-term strategies we're open to implementing sooner if we can find grant and or other funding. Basically, the reason they're long-term is because we don't have the funding, not because we don't want to do them. I don't know how to word that, but some blanket statement so that if a group really wants us to implement something sooner and they can help us with funding, then we can move forward.
I'm okay with that.
I think that's a great idea because it takes away any argument from people who say, why aren't you doing it now?
Right, we don't want to look like we're putting everything off. It's an
Right.
explanation as to why it's not a long term.
No, I mean, this costs money.
Yep.
Okay. Good. We're on public relations, I believe. Yep. Any comments there? Sheriff Bartlett, did you want to speak to that, or you just got your hand still up because you want to exercise it? Okay.
No, I'm exercising it, and we have been trying to take steps. If anybody's been looking at our social media, we're putting more stuff out, history of the department, different types of warrants, et cetera. So we're trying to make that site a little bit more active than it usually is. Again, social media presence and the content publicly, a lot of the people said that they need it more often. They want to see it more often. So that's what we're trying to do. Even getting down to when storms are coming, we're trying to get information out to people when the storms are coming and just so they're safe. So, and I still like the idea of a public relations person. I know the perfect guy. It's not me.
Body cameras, any conversation that we need to have about that we haven't said before? All right.
I know some of the supervisors sent over some of Hudson's body camera policy. We just had a pretty thorough presentation last week, so I'm not sure if anyone from the committee went through any of that information, but it would be good for us to have the same policy countywide.
I know that the mayor, I know the sheriff is going to be looking at a body cam policy. And I'm sure he'll look at the city of Hudson's and that's going to be then looked at by the public safety committee once the sheriff makes a recommendation. So, but thank you.
Great.
Tester, you have something?
Yeah, I'm wondering under long-term strategies for body cameras, why number 5 was removed, the established system to measure results and based on findings, refine the strategy. I realize a lot of them changed the word to explore, which could be changed, but I don't think we should take that out completely. I think we need to have a system in place to know if our body camera policy is working effectively and visit it periodically.
It's under short-term strategies.
Oh. The evaluate use and effectiveness.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you.
And if anybody wants to see them, there's one of them right there. So we're just, again, waiting for Axon to come here and hardware's here, software to implement software.
I have to say that the presentation by Hudson was excellent on the body cams. It really doesn't take long to look at it.
Great, thanks. Training, let's move on. Cultural sensitivity and bias. What does the yellow mean on there? Or not, I guess it's pink now.
It's the yellow, it's just that there was a comment from Supervisor Bury, which, hold on. Why can't I move it over? Beyond the training already provided per accreditation, he wanted that added in there.
Is there anything else we want? I mean, Beth, you spoke to, we want to be adding stuff in, but that it's going to happen somewhere amongst these sections, correct?
I did, I typed it in. I put it in under mental health until you decide where you actually want it.
Okay. Well, wherever, as long as it's in there.
Yeah, we could do a separate category for it if we need to.
Okay. We're ready to move on to mental health. Anything there? There was some new language added into there, right? Yeah.
Yeah, the report periodically to the Public Safety Committee. Supervisor Bury asked to add that in there.
Yep. Can we, as the heading, make it mental health / substance abuse?
Yep.
Thank you. Is everyone okay with that?
And just so everybody on the line knows,
Actually, very happy with it.
since we implemented this the 27th, we implemented it on our midnight shift. Within the first 8 hours, we had 2 referrals. So it is working. It's a great program. I've already been in touch with the chief from the city. I've already been in touch with all the chiefs and the OICs. So we're hoping at least to push this out to the other PDs. It's good because their follow-ups were made the very next, I believe the next day. I can't speak for Dan. But working together like this, it's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you, Sheriff. I appreciate that.
Dan?
Beth, getting some information, gambling addiction. If you've been looking at that and exploring it, what would you think that we should do about addressing that?
Well, I did review that. You know, at our clinic, we actually haven't seen that many people locally identify with that, but that's just at our clinic. So I'm not sure how many people in the community are actually impacted by this. I think it's a very significant thing if we can identify it. We're not in a position to identify it.
The information by 5%.
Yeah, I mean, we're just not seeing it as far as referrals for treatment or anything like that.
Okay.
I'm sure it's out there.
Nor are we on the road. We aren't, we'll run into overdoses, we'll run into addiction, cocaine, whatever else. I cannot even tell you any type of gambling addiction call that I've ever been on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dan, it's yours. You're good.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Good evening. I just want to second what Sheriff Bartlett said about the substance abuse mental health referral process. We have, in fact, gotten several referrals since those initial 2 referrals. And we've done, within reason, the outreach that we had talked about previously. I think we've made contact successfully with 1 or 2 people. Other people we've left voicemails for. And some people we've just not been able to reach. So all in all, I think it's really going well. It's been very well received by the staff at the Columbia County Mental Health Center. They understand it. They're buying into it. They're really committed to it. So I'm just really excited. And as far as the gambling piece goes, I'd just like to say, I think one thing that we could do as providers, and I don't want to speak for Beth, but is, implement some sort of screening, because if we don't ask the question upon admission when somebody comes to our doorstep, we're never going to know the answer. And, I know we don't have a casino locally, but people do travel to them, and people travel quite a distance to go to those casinos. And then what I've noticed when I was a clinician, and I don't think this has changed, is compulsive addictive behaviors with the scratch-offs. Those are definitely real in terms of people spending inordinate amounts of money on them. So if we begin to ask the question, we might find that more people are struggling with that issue. But, it's tough because we in behavioral health are at times bombarded with, the hot topic of the day, and are asked to gear our efforts and energies towards, whether it's the opioid epidemic, whether it's co-occurring disorders, whether it's issues related to the IDD population. So we could certainly probably improve how we screen for gambling. That's for sure.
Dan, I would like to say that at our clinic we do screen for gambling because it's part of the requirement of New York State OASIS. It's under their purview. We get very, very few, if almost none, reported cases of this. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist. A lot of people don't want to acknowledge it. But I'm just saying that we do screen for it. We're really seeing like almost nothing that makes us go in that direction.
I remembered that, Beth, that OASIS required that.
Right.
does not require us to screen for it. We have one question related to it on our initial assessment, but you know, it's low numbers if
Right.
at best.
It is low numbers, and I'm sure it exists out there, especially with the compulsive lottery ticket. I mean, I watch it in my local store, but we are not seeing it clinically.
Yeah. Thank
Just so everyone's aware, we're speaking about we were reached out to from the Northeast Gambling Resource Centers, which is a not-for-profit, and they reached out to us to see where if they could be included within the police reform, again, with the screening process when somebody's either arrested or picked up. So that's what they're discussing, just so you all know, because I didn't send this out to everybody, just because we didn't really know where to go with this until we found out more information. Thank you.
Robert?
And if I may, I'd like to just say one other thing. Earlier, we were talking about, you know, adding a caveat for the long-term strategies and emphasizing that in many cases, it's a financial barrier that keeps us from striving towards the long-term strategy. I agree, but I also want to, you know, use the referral system as an example of how that's the entry strategy. And our long-term strategy, as we've talked about, will come out in several different phases as we establish ourselves with a basic strategy that we can then build on. So sometimes the long-term strategy isn't just, money is not just the barrier, but there's this sequential approach that is more prudent to use. So I think that's important to somehow have people understand.
Robert, Robert Lagonia, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just have a question in reading through all of this. And this may not be under the purview of this document or what the intent of this is for, but when we're talking about mental health and we're talking about a very stressful time for everyone, including our officers, and we don't talk about them in reference to their mental health. And I didn't know if it was appropriate or not, but under long-term strategies, you know, we're talking about securing funding for trainings and all of these other items, but why aren't we talking about securing funding potentially for any of our officers that in fact are stressed out or having a difficult time with all of this just in general, and that we're there to support them as well? Because if they're not mentally stable or mentally healthy, how can we do any of this? So I just want to make sure that we're not just bypassing the officers or anybody that's involved. And again, it may not be under police reform. I don't know how it's not. But if everybody involved with this is not helping.
It is under police reform. There is a section about police mental health. If you look at the guidelines set forth by the state, this is one of the issues that we still have to address for sure.
Correct. I just want to make sure that we're not just blowing by that and not looking at the health and the stability of our own officers, because we can put all of these regulations in and changes, which I think are great, but we also need a stable group of people that are going to be able to do this. So I just want to make sure that we're supporting them and making sure that at some point we're going to discuss this, because I think it's incredibly important, and I don't think we're talking about them enough. So I just want to make sure that I'm going to bring that point in.
Yeah, Rob, I'm glad you brought that up, because a couple of meetings ago, I raised the issue of screening for potential employees of the criminal justice system, and like who's doing that and what kind of psychological screening are they getting. This was exactly the kind of a thing I was talking about. And the fact of the matter is, people may enter this system and this line of work just fine. But after, years of doing this and experiencing an awful lot of trauma themselves, they may really need to have some kind of review or assistance in these matters. And it needs to be a system that is not punitive. Unlike, like the military, if you go for a mental health assessment, you're flagged and you can no longer do a certain kind of intelligence work. So I think that's a really great point.
I just want to make sure that we have a safe place for our officers too. And
Yes,
again, it's not to protect or to hide anything, but it is,
right.
they need help too. And I think it's imperative that we have that discussion at some point. So
I
I-
agree.
No,
They
no.
need that support.
Sheriff Bartlett, what currently goes on in terms, is there a mental health screening or?
Yeah, we have a very in-depth background investigation that we do, including a psychological. It's extremely in-depth. Just touching on a couple things here, because there were 3 or 4 things that people had said. Going back to the referral form, that's just really the infants. It's the very infant stages of that, because we can add anything to that. Could be DSS, it could be gambling, it could be anything. So we could add to that. Supervisor Lagonia, thank you very much for bringing that up for our officers. It's very important. We really could use a good EAP program, and absolutely nothing against HR or anything else. Those people do a great job. But currently right now, if I have somebody that I need to, they need to talk to somebody. We used to use DCSO, Dutchess County, a lot. They had a great EAP program with police officers and mental health and people from the community on it. Because cops want to talk to cops. And right now, thanks to the Albany police chief, I'm able to use Albany PD's EAP program. And there's been many times that we've been able to get help to officers. And I'm not going to go into particulars, but for different situations, it could be just a really bad scene. We do see a lot of bad stuff, and they want to talk about it. So I think maybe in long term, we come up with maybe some type of EAP where we have police officers, we have mental health professionals, and whoever else we decide to put on this team, because it may not even be our team that's utilized here in county. Don't forget, we've had our EMS providers, and PJ Keeler can attest to this, that when they have an EAP that comes in, but sometimes, again, the police officers like to talk to police officers. So it may be going, Dutchess County may use us, Greene County may use, it may be swapping a team, is basically what I'm saying.
Sheriff, just for the public, can you tell them what EAP stands for?
Employee Assistance Program.
Thank you.
Mayor Johnson.
Yeah, we're actually working with the state police to start an EAP program in Hudson. I'm going to be meeting with Elliot Boyce, who's the director there, this week again. So, I mean, if that's something that we can also do countywide, I think those are some of the avenues we should take. I also had another question about the mental health referrals. Are we documenting whether those people seek services after?
So I'd be happy to answer that, Mayor. In our case, we are maintaining a spreadsheet. There's a spreadsheet that's shared between ourselves, law enforcement, and Greener Pathways staff. And on that spreadsheet, we're memorializing our outreach and the outcome of the outreach. At this point, we're not necessarily going beyond that because we know that there will be more elaborate phases to this. But we figured, again, under the auspices of just getting something very basic off the ground to be able to operationalize something in a quick way, it was agreed upon that we would just simply memorialize how quickly we were able to do the outreach. And our internal standard is that day of, if it's during a weekday. If it's over the weekend, then we would definitely respond, follow up on that Monday morning if it's not a holiday. And then we have a column that we've entered into the spreadsheet where we memorialize the outcome, whether we were successful in connecting with the person, left a voicemail, or unable to connect.
Gotcha. Thanks.
That's just.
Hey, Newell, I received a text from one of our participants that said they can hardly hear you.
Okay. Is that better?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Beth, you had your hand up? I guess I'm not. Okay, let's move on to Sheriff Bartlett. You had your hand up.
Yeah, I did. I just wanted to echo what Mayor Johnson just said. I agree with you 100%. Needs to be a countywide team, Mayor, and, you know, maybe somebody from HPD and so on and so forth. So that's a great point, and thank you for bringing that up.
Okay, we got this let's move on to person with disabilities and medical conditions. Is there anything in that section that people want to talk about? We're good? Let's move on to de-escalation of force. Testry, did you have your hand up for that?
Yes, thank you. Let me get to my notes. So when I look at de-escalation of force under short-term strategies, the ban or limit no-knock warrants, less SWAT-style raids, less military equipment got taken out. In my conversation with Sheriff Bartlett, it seems that the sheriff's office already limits no-knock warrants and already doesn't use military equipment. So I see that as low-hanging fruit. I would encourage including that because it's very important and it's something that we heard from a lot of the community input. So if it's something that the sheriff's office already, not banning them completely, but limiting them, and I know it talks before about, you know, threat assessment, which is great. So just a statement that, you know, limit no-knock warrants and utilize only when absolutely necessary, I think is a strong statement to put in here. And it seems like it's what the sheriff's office is doing already. So I don't see why we would take it out. I think we keep it in there, maybe even not under short-term strategies, maybe under, you know, current actions. But I think it's important to put that in writing that the sheriff's office is committed to limiting the no-knock warrants and not utilizing military equipment, which in our conversations, it sounds like they're already doing. So I would really encourage putting that back in there, maybe even under current actions.
Sheriff, is there any reason not to do that?
I don't think there is any reason. I mean, we already moved it up to number 2. Yeah, number 1. But we do threat assessments. We don't have any military equipment. You know, people talk about military equipment, the 1033 program, where they're getting Humvees or where they're getting MRAPs, et cetera. We don't have any of that stuff. So there will always be a need to have some type of a tactical team around, because if stuff's going downhill, where officers are taking fire, you know, we've got to be able to have some better trained people around. Unfortunately, right now, we've got a shortage of officers actually for the team. But you know, I really don't see a problem with that. But at the end of the day, if we have to go out and do our job, once doing a threat assessment, we have to go do our job.
Could I ask a question? This is Beth.
Yes.
What does time of day imply? What is the meaning of
Go
that?
back to like if there's kids at school, is it in the middle of the night, or are the kids going to be around, or it's all different factors that we take into consideration for a variety of things that we may utilize in some type of a raid. You know, you may use certain tools for certain things if there's a threat for weapons, violence, etc. If you have somebody it doesn't pose a threat, you may arrest them another way. But it's a pretty in-depth document that is done to just, again, it's a full threat assessment that's done on every single mission that they go out on.
But I mean, if it were necessary, are you allowed per this de-escalation of force summary here to do that? I mean, if it's absolutely necessary. I mean, I can foresee situations where this is your only option.
Correct.
Yeah, and my suggested wording was limit no-knock warrants and utilize only when absolutely necessary. So I think that wording allows it when it's absolutely necessary to be determined by the threat assessment. So I don't think it's preventing the sheriff's office when it's deemed absolutely necessary if you word it that way. But it's something they're already doing, and I think it's important to put that down in writing.
Yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure it's like not a promise that this will never happen.
Right. Okay, we good with this? No. I'm sorry, Robert.
Does this also include arrest warrants? Same procedures?
Yeah, I mean, arrest warrants, search warrants, arrest warrants, you got a probable cause to go into people's houses. Arrest warrants are usually pending off of search warrants. It's piggybacking each other. I just, can't go break into your house. I've got to have probable cause to go in.
No, I understand all of that, all the legality of that, Sheriff. I'm just wondering if we should also mention search warrants and arrest warrants, because they are different. But if you don't think so, that's fine.
But I don't think it would make a difference either way. So, I mean, if they wanted to put it in, fine. If not, the search warrants are the ones that we get when we're going to hit houses.
I would agree with Supervisor Bury if it doesn't make a difference either way that you specify search warrants and arrest warrants.
Yeah, just based on my experience with search warrants, not search warrants, but arrest warrants, most of those are executed in the middle of the night. So you're doing an assessment, you're doing a threat assessment before you knock on somebody's door at 1 o'clock in the morning, because that's when they're going to be at home. So some of these things, some of these elements would also apply to those types of warrants.
Yeah, again, remember, so I just can't go in your house on an arrest warrant. We need our search warrant to go in, and when we do go to the house, to go into the house, we have to get a search warrant signed by the judge, and not on arrest warrants.
Okay. We're putting that down there. Moving on to mental health substance abuse referral. I think we've actually been talking about that when we were under training. Is there anything more in this section, other than lots of congratulations for how far it's come in this time period? Testria, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, so I'm really proud to see all of this down. I did have a question, probably for you, Sheriff Bartlett. One of my suggestions was adopting a policy of diversion and treatment instead of arrest for appropriate drug offenses, and I saw that came out, and I just wanted to have a conversation. I think it's really important not just that people get a referral, but that when it's appropriate, they don't get jammed up in the criminal justice system, but instead they get the referral. Is there a reason to not, maybe we don't say adopt a policy, maybe we say explore a policy, but is there a reason that we can't explore that further?
Where would that go? Where are you referring to specifically?
I'm sorry, it was under short-term strategies number 4 on the red and blue document. And then it got lined through and didn't make it onto this draft.
I mean, that's a difficult thing. When we're on a scene of arresting, the district attorney's got to be involved on that. How do we determine if I arrest Johnny or I arrest Jimmy? How do I determine that? Or Jimmy goes to diversion. I mean, we do sort of have something. They still get arrested, but then they, for narcotics offenses, they'll go to drug court. And they work with Judge Nichols, and we have people on drug court. So that's an interesting subject, and it would have to be looked at, because I don't even know how you would determine who to do it with, or even how to do it with. So, I mean, it could be a long-term talk, but I don't even see how you would pick out, because then if I picked out somebody that said, hey, well, I'm going to send them to diversion, then somebody else is going to say, well, why didn't I go? And so it's something we'd have to talk about. Absolutely.
Dan?
I think that's out of the purview of the law enforcement, frankly. I think that's the next step for someone to make that determination. I don't think it's for the law enforcement to make that determination.
That's exactly right. That was.
I would agree with that. It's like if you refer someone to get an assessment or obtain treatment, it's out of the police agency's hand. It's at that point, it's like up to the court to make sure whether or not they followed through and what they're doing. You know, police can't follow up on all that.
Robert.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on that. I mean, that's why the system, I know it doesn't always work, but it's set up in such a way that to catch these types of things. So law enforcement makes the arrest, and then goes in front of the DA, and then the judge is going to assess these things, whether it's in an arraignment or afterwards, to say maybe this individual will be best suited to go to a drug court or to mental health. But it's not something that law enforcement, frankly, has the time or to do that. It's the next steps. They make the arrest, it comes in, and then there's other people making sure that these individuals are going to the right place. So thank you.
And do you have more? Or,
Yeah, thanks, Newell. All I would want to add is that, yeah, I think the infrastructure, the mechanisms to operationalize this would have to be fine-tuned, because even in the court system, there's a level of subjectivity when it comes to who gets, hit with the criminal penalty versus who gets maybe diverted. So I think there's a lot of work to take the subjective out and create an objective framework so that decisions can be made more easily and consistently. And then, of course, we have a mechanism for substance use disorders through the county drug treatment court, but then we really don't have a mechanism for mental health related issues. Some counties and municipalities throughout the United States have mental health treatment courts. It's been spoken about here from what I understand, but it's never, gotten traction. So we would have, it's a much larger conversation, as people have said.
Yeah, I'd also like to add that opting into drug court is a voluntary situation. You really can't mandate that. So if someone opts out of that and still has a substance abuse problem, we're still facing a very difficult tracking system. And, so that's the way it is. I mean, everybody that gets arrested with a substance abuse problem does not go to drug court. They just don't.
Robert?
No, I agree. I think it's back to David Harrison's point early on, that this is outside of the purview of the reason that we're having this. That's a much larger discussion as to the criminal justice system and how things work, but it just doesn't work that way. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay. We have anything more under mental health substance abuse referral? We were covering process, procedures, and protocol. How about standards? Anything in there? Dan, you said your hands. Okay. Okay.
I think the standards they speak for themselves. I mean, either we meet the standards or we haven't met the standards. And in our sheriff's department's case, they've met all the standards.
Yeah, we either meet or exceed all standards.
Let's move on to hiring then. Diversity recruitment. Is there everybody any word changes or anything missing here? Bill, you want to explain what you got there?
It's pretty self-explanatory, no?
Okay.
And again, don't forget that we're still in talks with state civil service about this, myself and 4 other sheriffs. We've got a meeting coming up. The next meeting's within the week because anything with diversity, we're handcuffed with by the state. So every single sheriff on that panel, including myself, agrees that that does need to be changed. And so we're working with the state. So we're going to see how we make out. And our local civil service is great, but it's got to be changed on the state level. And we have reached out to our legislators also to get them on board. And everybody is on board with this. So it's just a matter of making the stuff work again and getting the puzzle pieces back together.
Sarah, Sarah Sterling, you want to say something?
Yeah, just on the short-term strategies number 4. I had a good talk with Mr. Hughes today about this because one of my pet projects, instead of look to organizations, we could say partner with organizations for scholarship opportunities, and then take out the should be followed up on and just do it. Because I think we could do some GoFundMe's, get scholarships going, and definitely partner. And that way the funding would be available.
Is it possible to do like a public-private partnership on this and request that certain organizations or companies donate to this? I mean, is that appropriate or not? I don't know the limits of this.
Yeah, that's what we did under the last did the program. As long as you're not donating the money to the county, you're donating it to a nonprofit who's actually making the recommendations to the county. That's where the partnership would come in.
Okay. Because there may be companies that or organizations in Columbia County that would say, this is a really worthwhile thing to donate to.
Right. Yep. And plus, governments are some hamstringed, as the sheriff stated, because you're not allowed to, do set asides for ethnic groups and things of that nature. But you can create programs within nonprofits, and they too have to be careful. But what they can say is, we're doing career training, and they can recommend, individuals to get a scholarship or recommend them to be sponsored by the sheriff through the parameters that they set up, not parameters that we, the county, set up. As long as they're meeting minimum quality.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Bill.
Sarah, do you still have something to say, or is that your hand just? Okay. Are we ready to move on to community relations then? Okay. And we have the first section, community policing. Any comments on that things you'd want to add, change, explore? We're good. Ben here. Elliot. We're good. Okay. Complaint process. Abdus.
Yeah, I don't know. It is a fit for community relation. I think so. Mr. Bartlett was agreed that they are not involved anything in force and immigration law, but I want to see that it's writing because it is relation affected between police and community. Is it a possible that we can put in a police involvement in the immigration law? So if they cannot involve that.
So what Sheriff with Supervisor Mia was asking for is language in there that the sheriffs don't involve with ICE.
ICE, yes.
We don't do civil detainers anymore. We haven't worked with ICE in a long time. But as I've said in the past, if there's a police officer yelling for help, we're going to go help them. I couldn't tell you the last time we worked at ICE. They don't call us. Again, any detainers over in the jail, there has to be a warrant attached to that, not just a civil ICE detainer warrant. We don't take any of those. So, I mean, I don't know. We'd have to talk about that because, again, if there's a police officer yelling for help, I don't care who they are. We're going to go help them. There's enough cops getting killed every single day. 2 more were just killed this morning down in Florida, executed a search warrant. One guy, one girl. The one guy actually was from Albany, started in Albany. So we'd have to talk about that, Supervisor.
I think so. I think there's a difference between what he's saying. So if you have an officer that's trying to detain someone, and they're crying for help, that's different than ICE coming in and asking or requesting your agency to help them detain people.
Yes, thank you, Hughes. That is the happen. That's
There's-
I do that one because it is relation, public relation. So police is supporting the ICE coming do their work. That's fine. I don't want a local police agency involved that to give the information, give them, then they help them.
So is it, so Sheriff, is it where we could craft language saying that, you would resist request from ICE to participate? Something like of that nature?
It's something we're gonna have to talk about, Bill.
Okay, we can
Okay.
talk about.
I mean, I'm open for discussion, but again, we haven't gone out with them. We couldn't tell you the last time. The last time I heard ICE was here, they were in Valatia, and we didn't even have the slightest clue they were there. The only reason I heard, because somebody told me on the street, there were a bunch of guys running around with jackets on. They don't call us, and we don't know when they're here. So we could talk about it, Bill. We have good conversations.
Okay, Mr. Bartlett, I thank you that you recognize that you don't involve that. Today, you are the chief. Tomorrow, somebody else. They can use it. So we have to have something writing. So that is the relation on one part. You have to have it. We are not 100. You are not 100% lifelong over there. So somebody should be. I believe you. I trust you. But you have to have a writing anything. I don't know why you do not want to do writing. I don't know. So
Well, Supervisor Mia, I'll sit down with the sheriff, and if we can craft something, we'll try our best. So I'll prompt, I can strive for that.
Gene Member.
And there's a lot of other legal things that go on with this. There's civil stuff, there's arrest warrants, I'm bound by law to do certain things. So Bill and I will sit down. Abdus, I would love to sit down with you too. You and I have great conversations, but there's more than just us talking. There's legal stuff that we have to worry about. So again, we're at 7:15. We'll talk about this.
okay.
Yeah, that discussion covered my concerns. I agree with Bill Hughes that there's some way that this can be worked out. If what Sheriff Bartlett is saying can be reduced to language which is appropriate, I think both concerns could be addressed. Thank you.
Okay. How about Testria?
Yeah, I had a different thing, but I did want to weigh in on that as well. I agree with Abdus and Jeannie. I think there's a way to word it that allows Sheriff Bartlett to assist if an officer is in danger, yet doesn't actively participate, which again, I see that as low-hanging fruit. He's already doing that. So let's put something in writing as to what he's already doing without preventing being able to help an officer that calls for help. So I look forward to working on that further. This was the section from section 1, Captain Bray, where you said you took section 1 and put it in 5. I would just like to see wording about the complaint forms at county buildings, maybe under short-term strategies, III form can be filled out by hand, and in parentheses, copies available for pickup at CCSO, county buildings, and some town halls, or if all towns will do it, all town halls. Because like, for example, in New Lebanon, we're 45 minutes away from the sheriff's office. So if they can be available, I know they're available online, but not everybody does computers. So I think we should put that wording in that they're available for pickup at least county buildings and potentially some town buildings. And then my other question or point of clarification, there's been a lot of question about whether this is just the sheriff's office or whether we're actually doing the review for Greenport Police, Philmont Police. There was a section originally countywide endeavor for all law enforcement agencies. That maybe doesn't need to be said, but again, I think there should be some blanket statement at the beginning, Chairman Morrell, that acknowledges. So in my conversation with Chairman Morrell, it does seem that we are doing this for all police agencies inside Columbia County, not just the sheriff's office. So I think that needs to be clearly dictated.
Yeah, all participating police agencies, which are Greenport, Philmont, and Stockport. Chatham is on their own, and obviously Hudson was on their own. But the three smaller local police departments are participating in this process.
So yeah, I'd like to just see at the beginning that stated
Yep.
sheriff's office. agree.
It'll be included in the overview. There's definitely a lot of that language in there already.
Great, thank you.
David Harrison.
I just wanted to say, when you make the statement on ICE, I don't think that you should make a final end-all statement. You may have the current president restructure ICE, reorganize so that it's more community-friendly and which, in my opinion, should include working with the local law enforcement agencies once it's restructured. But I just don't think you should have an end-all statement.
Okay. Good. Anybody? Senior checks is our last section. Any comments here? Okay. Sherry.
Thank you. I do have a question. In working, because especially what opened my eyes quite a bit is working with people with the vaccine questions on the hotline. The vast amount of elderly in the rural areas, especially, that are very hard to reach. What is the process in reaching out to find out who the elderly are that might need, that might benefit from the senior check program? Do you reach out to OFA or are there other agencies? Thank you.
Sheriff or?
That has nothing to do with me.
Okay.
I mean, that's a health department question.
No, I'm not asking about vaccines. I'm asking, how do you reach out to your people?
Oh, as far as the senior checks,
Yes.
we go see them every day. We go to their house, we knock on their door and say, hey, are you okay, Sherry? And yeah, how you doing, David? And we chat for a few minutes and then they head out.
No, I think my actual question is, how do you find out who these people are? Where do they find out this information, rather than if they don't have access to computers, how do they find out about getting involved with senior checks?
Okay, I got it now. All right, sorry about that. Word of mouth, basically. I'd love to see it expanded more. Again, it's time consuming for the deputies when they're on calls to make sure they get to their senior checks if they're having a busy shift and they're running call to call. There's over 600 square miles that they cover, but right now it's basically word of mouth and us just trying to get it out when we talk to people. I believe OFA does know about it because we deal with OFA with our daily call. But this is just one added thing during COVID that we did. I'm not sure the exact number. I think it was close to 2,000 senior checks we've already done since the implementation of this program.
Gene, can you hear me?
Yes, yeah. I'm sorry, I'm back a page before we get to seniors. I just wanted to raise some issues about the language with regard to what might otherwise be known as a community review board or a civilian complaint board. And I'm seeing from what you've written here that apparently that the name for that is up for grabs. It says need proper name. Review committee, need proper name. I'm less concerned with the name of it than defining the parameters of this committee. I know that there are some people who think that it should have subpoena power. I have taken the position that we shouldn't try to define the procedures that will be employed by that committee. I think that the further that will take a lot more exploration, research about what other communities do, which kind of a committee is effective, which ones are not effective, which ones unduly interfere with prosecutions and therefore should be avoided. So in that same spirit that I'm not pushing now to say that it should have subpoena power, I also am concerned that some of the language on this page really takes the teeth out of that committee and really limits it. But at the this language, at the conclusion of the complaint process, the findings will be forwarded to a review committee, quote unquote, as a redacted or blind document. I would prefer that we simply, in this, take out all this language that would restrict or limit that committee and simply say that committee, whatever we're going to call it, that committee, the creation of that committee will be explored. And then put a few people onto that project and let them do the research, because I don't think we should be either expanding or limiting that committee in this document, my view.
Any comments about that? Okay. Thanks. We're good?
No, I really can't hear you. So
Yeah, I need to speak up.
I guess I would second what Jeannie's saying, that until the research is done, I had said before, Sabina Power, Sheriff Bartlett and I talked, there were some concerns. I don't think we need to define that they're going to have power, but I also don't think we should define that they're not going to have any power, and leave it as an open-ended, we're going to explore this further and then do the research. How are other communities doing it? What works, what doesn't work? And without having done that research, I think it would be unwise to define or put parameters in place without knowing. There are many organizations, law enforcement organizations across the country that have some sort of citizen review panel, and there's many different models that are set up. I've done some preliminary research, and I just feel like we don't have time to do all the research, but because we don't know yet what that's going to look like, let's leave it a little bit open-ended. Let's not commit to it one way or the other, just commit to that we're going to do the research.
Okay. Comments on that? Anybody?
Bill, Sheriff, do you have anything to add?
No, I think we had some extensive conversations, and I think that with Jeannie and what Supervisor Mettler and Supervisor Hotel is saying has some merit. But when you look at this committee, you want to get the framework in place first. And just like we're looking at other programs and we're saying, okay, you could build on that. That's exactly the same direction that you're taking here is you're putting something in place. We will determine what the makeup of the body is. We will start with complaints. And if years or some time down the road that expands into something else, that you will have room to do that. But to say, okay, let's put a committee in place and go do the research, then you get nothing. So you want to put the framework in place, have it so it can handle the complaint process, and you give the public some assurance that when they are filing complaints, they can file it with the board. They can file it through the process that that was earlier laid out. But you have a process where the public can feel comfortable that their complaints will be heard and that they will get feedback on what happened with that complaint. And like I said, you could build on it moving forward after that. But to say that, let's just put something up there and then say we'll do research, it's not, I don't think it's acceptable.
Maybe I'm misunderstanding. It seems to me that it's somewhat contradictory here, but maybe it's not. I'm looking at explore the establishment of a complaint intake committee. Okay, that's fine with me. I would have left it at that. But down below, it does say that a complaint can be filed with the intake committee. So maybe that addresses my concerns. I was focusing on this last paragraph that says, at the conclusion of the complaint investigation, the findings will be forwarded to the review committee as redacted or blind document. So if in addition to that section, you're also engaging the possibility that someone might go straight to the review committee, whatever we're calling it, and then that would not be a redacted or anonymous complaint. That would be a complaint filed by a citizen. If the review committee can hear or engage complaints both from the Office of Professional Standards and also on a direct referral from a citizen, then maybe my concerns are already addressed.
Yeah, that's how it was written.
Okay.
So
Okay. Then if I misunderstood it, then that I'm fine with that. I just think we should leave it broad and let yeah, we shouldn't box ourselves in at this point in any direction. So, thank you.
Yeah, I think we were trying to avoid that. What we were trying to do is to get some framework in place. So one that the police were comfortable with it, but also we want the public to be comfortable to know that their complaints are being handled just more as a trust builder. And then, you know, as things move along, I fully expect that a lot of these programs that we're outlining on this document will get expanded or amended over time.
Yeah. Okay. I might have misunderstood. I might have misunderstood what you had written. I still think we should just go ahead and call it. I mean, I was sitting here Googling what you could call it, a complaint review board, a civilian review board. I think we should give it a name so people understand what we're talking about. That's what I think.
So send some things in. We'll look through and we'll try to figure out. We don't want to, you know, have a copycat name. We will come up, if we can come up with something original to Columbia County. So.
Well, Albany, I'm looking, Albany has the Community Police Review Board. So I think we should use language which is clear enough so that people get what we're saying. So.
Yeah, I get it.
Sarah Sterling?
Yeah, just a question. I don't know what the Office of Professional Standards is and how they come into this.
I can answer that, Supervisor. Number one, Jeannie, you just brought up about Albany, or somebody did.
Yeah, I did.
And this is modeled after Albany's complaint process. We've looked at Albany's, we've looked at Schenectady's, you know, we've looked at bigger PDs, what they've been doing. Sarah, the Office of Professional Standards, that's my internal affairs. We're going to be changing the name of it and actually expanding it a little bit, adding some more officers to it, where the intake process would actually go straight to Office of Professional Standards, no matter what the complaint is. Again, if somebody wanted to send it straight to the intake committee because they didn't feel comfortable with contacting us, either, you know, calling us, writing it down from a town hall, emailing us, they could go straight to intake committee, and then the intake committee at that point would send the complaint over to Office of Professional Standards. But this is just still, even though we're looking at this form and things have been changed or moved, this is still a living document. And it, you know, we're trying to finalize stuff, but it still is living. So it's still in process.
Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anything more in this section we need to talk about? So is there anything we missed all from the beginning till now? Sarah, and then Testria. Sarah?
Yeah, I have one question that kind of outside of this, but it comes up occasionally question about blind spots in the jail for the cameras. Is this true or rumor or?
There's cameras and all that. There's no blind spots. You know, if people are alleging that somebody's going there and they're being mistreated, there's not blind spots. As a matter of fact, I was fortunate enough, and I'll offer to any supervisor that you're more than welcome to come. I will give you a tour of the jail personally, along with my captain, and you'll see exactly how professional and how well run that jail is. It's one of the cleanest in the state. The state has commended us on that, and we actually just got a report back on our kitchen that the state said that it's one of the best kitchens they've seen in the state. So at any time, if you would like to come, the invitation is open, and I'd love to give you the 50-cent tour.
Thanks. I took one a long time ago, but I might come again. But thanks. I'd just like to get that question out in the open and answered. Thanks.
Yeah, and don't forget, the Commissioner of Corrections oversees us with a microscope, and we don't have any problems whatsoever. The commission always comes back with glowing reviews, and we work very close with the commission. You know, you don't want to fight with people that are working with you. And the commission loves coming down here because they say our jail is really run well. And that's not because of me. That's because of the men and women over there doing the job every single day. And I've got to commend the corrections officers, because you always hear so much about deputies. You never hear anything about the COs. And those men and women are just awesome people. And they do a great job with the inmates that are over there.
Thank you. Tester, you have your hand up, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So at the end, I had a bunch of blue line things. I do realize a lot of them had to do with courts and other things, and I agree that this is not the document for that. But there were a few that I didn't feel were addressed that I wanted to discuss and potentially bring into the document. The first is I heard a lot in the community input about language and access to language services. I don't know that we need to have the exact answer. I know that we use, or I believe that we use language line services, but it seems that there's a lot of discontentment or people not feeling like they're having adequate language services. And so I do feel like under community relations, that's probably the best place for it. We should put at least something that we're going to explore language access. You know, I had recommended that, you know, if we increase diversity, we might be able to have deputies who speak, you know, different languages, Bengali and other languages in the county. But I do think we should put something in the plan that addresses that concern that was heard a lot. Is that something people are opposed to?
I'm okay with it, looking or exploring it.
Okay, so I would ask my number 6 on that blue line that just get incorporated maybe under community relations, saying that we're going to explore, you know, an increased access to language. Thank you. I know I've talked about this multiple times about an implementation committee of sorts, and I know Chairman Morrell talked about the police reform, or I'm sorry, the public safety committee being the implementation committee, which I think is a fine answer. But I would request then that we meet more than just that we have an outside meeting, because when we have our public safety meeting, it's not just the sheriff's department. We have multiple departments, and even just one ticket item from here of the body camera policy, working together with the sheriff's office, that's going to be much more than even an hour-long meeting. And so if we're not going to have an implementation committee that's separate from public safety, I would request Chairman Benvenuto that we have maybe 2 meetings a month, one that's solely focused on the implementation of this plan, and then our regular meeting at least for 6 months or as long as we need it.
Well, we can vote on that as a committee and determine if that's necessary, when we need to start it, and what actually we would be doing. So that's something we could do in committee.
Great, thank you. And I just,
if I can just jump in, this is another issue where I would say we shouldn't try to fine tune it. We should simply put a statement in that says that there will be something about we will implement the plan, we will create a committee, we will, and not define who's going to do it. My view would be that it's a lot of work. Maybe a subcommittee of the public safety committee should be doing this. I just think this is a big topic. But once again, I don't think we should try to figure out exactly how we're going to implement it or exactly who's going to oversee it. We should just say that we will take steps to implement it, or we'll create a committee or whatever, leave it open-ended. That's my view.
I agree.
Oh, thank you.
Great. So do you mind just adding that wording in, Chairman, that says there will be some sort of committee to be determined for implementation?
I think whatever it is, it's going to be related to the public safety committee, but we can, you know, we can develop that as we move along.
Great. And I just have 2 more. Long-term, short-term goals. We talked about it, adding something and saying long-term goals or long-term goals because of funding. If funding becomes available, we're open to making them shorter-term goals. I do think there should be a definition of what short-term means. I don't think it needs to be 6 months, but I think it should say, you know, within the next year or within the next 18 months, as opposed to we're going to work on this thing and leaving it so open-ended. So in the section that talks about long-term goals being, you know, dependent on funding, and that they could become shorter-term goals if funding became available, and that they'll be addressed when funding becomes available. I think we should also put that the short-term goals are within the next, and, you know, Sheriff Bartlett could really say what that is, 12 to 18 months, 6 to 12 months, but have some parameter, or not even box us in that much, but, you know, we're going to attempt to get all the short-term goals in place in the next X amount of time.
Once you see the worksheet that we're going to put all this information into, the last column is, you know, implementation. And, you know, you can say 18 months, 12 months, or you can say, it can say 4 years. In some cases, for especially some of the town PDs, the, you know, purchasing of body cameras may be a 3 or 4 year process. You know, we fully intend to do it, but, you know, we don't have the finances that some of the county has, for example.
Supervisor, just curious, I would time period, if you could put together some kind of subcommittee coming out of the public safety committee, you may find that short term may mean 2 weeks or
Mhm.
and long term may mean 1 year or 6 months. It's just depending on funding and how rapidly you could develop some of this stuff. So to put a time frame like that on it would actually limit yourself.
Yeah, I like what Chairman Morel said. I just didn't want to see it be like, this is a short-term goal, and then 5 years later being like, we're working on it. So I just wanted to have some parameter, but if there's a check mark or a time frame, that's
Yeah.
perfect. The last bit I had is probably for Sheriff Bartlett. I'm not sure if you saw the kind of blue notes at the end of my document, but either under standards or training, something about you know, physical fitness standards, substance testing, regular training on control methods such as safer takedown methods. And I know that somebody mentioned this earlier. If there is possibility of inappropriate bias or actions, then counseling should be provided. So it's twofold. It's one, making sure that, you know, everyone's trained properly, and also making sure that they have the support that they need. So I didn't see that get incorporated in, and I was hoping that we could think about that getting in there somewhere under the training.
Yeah, I don't see why that can't be put in there.
Awesome. Thank you very much. That's all I had.
Okay. Sarah, Sarah, you had your hand up. Is that, you're on mute right now. You're still on
No,
mute.
I forgot to take it down. Thanks.
Okay. Is there, when you look at this whole thing, are there any sections that somehow you feel are missing? That, you know, we've been through a lot, and sometimes when we look at something like this, there's like, oh, you know, is there anything, you know, it's kind of like it's speak now or forever hold your, you know, that one. Is there something missing? And if not, I'm going to turn the meeting back over to, you know, the supervisor, to Matt.
Okay. Thanks, Newell. I just want to thank everyone for the effort that you've put into this. I mean, it's been a process, but it's supposed to be a process, and you know, it's not an easy process, but I'm actually proud of the work we've done. I think it's a good document, and you know, in moving forward, my hope is that the people that are on this committee and who are also on the plan review committee will reiterate, like I have, the amount of work that went into this, and that, you know, that this is a document we should move forward to a public hearing. You know, it's, you know, a few weeks ago or a few months ago when we started this process, I had my doubts myself, but I think we've done a heck of a job, and I think we've impressed our facilitator. I had a conversation with him today about the dedication of everybody on this committee. So I just would like to thank you all. It's you know, it's something to be proud of. And I'd like to thank the sheriff and his people for their hard work on this issue. They've done a lot, as well as Sherry Franks.
Okay, Mr. Morel, thank you very much. You know, we've also got to thank everybody here that I'm looking at right now, but as well as the public input. You know, we welcome the information that people have given us. We welcome the changes that we need to do. And we've already started doing it. And there's always room for improvement. If you get to the point where you're saying, we can't improve anything, get the heck out of the job you're in, because you can always improve. And again, I want to thank everyone, because there has been a lot of time and energy put into this. And there's so many unsung heroes. I mean, I'm looking at a couple of them right now that are just nonstop working on this. And the people from the public that have sent us stuff and said, hey, what about this? And picking little ideas in and out, it's good. So thank you from all of us here at the office.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to add that the amazing thing about this process is the fact that we did it all virtually. Which is a challenge, as you all know. And the other amazing thing is the level of transparency that we've had with this process. From beginning to end. I mean, every meeting has been in the public eye, and that's the way we wanted it. So again, thank you all.
I'd also like to thank Captain Louis Bray and Lieutenant Rivero. They put a lot of time and effort into the information that we would put forth to everyone. So thank you guys.
Been great.
We still have 2 more meetings, right? I mean, it's not final.
Well, the plan review committee, it could be 1 meeting. I'm kind of keeping my fingers crossed that if it's not, we have a second meeting scheduled. But we like to do the plan review process and then start actually finalizing the document so that it can go to public hearing. And for it to go to public hearing, we need to release it to the public. So, there's some dance steps here that we have to do.
Okay.
But I think we can do it. And I'm hoping we can do plan review within 1 meeting. But we have scheduled 2 just in case.
Yeah, and as far as implementation and following up on the plan, I fully expect, just like when this executive order was first passed, we had to wait probably 2 months before we got the guidance from the state in the form of the booklet that we're going by now. I fully expect further guidance, recommendations, and requirements coming down from the state in regards to this plan. So I think we're at a good point. I just saw 2 weeks ago where some municipalities were just starting their process. So some people, I had heard originally, you're starting too late, or I think we've done pretty well. We've gone over a lot of information. So thanks to everybody.
Very good work. I deal with a lot. This is a good one.
Thank you. Yeah, you got to thank Newell, keeping us on course.
As long as you can hear me.
Thank you, Newell.
I missed the count, Newell.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks for all your input.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Lou.